Hey, you guys, welcome back for part two of the biggest news stories of the 1980s, according to an 80s kid. If for some reason you missed part one, there is a link in the description. My name is Natalie. This is my so called Gen X life. I really appreciate you watching. Now, let's quickly recap the first six stories on my list, and then we'll get this video started.
Cyanide-contaminated Tylenol has been responsible for 3 deaths in the Arlington Heights area. Do not take Tylenol until further notice.
This shopping mall in affluent Westchester County, New York, exemplifies how easy it is for children, or adults for that matter, to get their hands on satanic material.
And now, here comes part two of the biggest news stories of the 1980s, according to an 80s kid.
I'm Geraldo Rivera, and you're about to witness a live television event. A massive concrete vault has been discovered. Some think it belonged to none other than the notorious Al Capone.
Geraldo Rivera began his career as an attorney and activist who entered the news business in the early 1970s and quickly became an award-winning journalist. But when he was very publicly fired by ABC in 1985 in what could be described as a fall from grace, Rivera suddenly found himself looking for his next job. And on April 21st, 1986, millions of people, including quite a few 80s kids, got to witness his new gig, ringmaster of televised stunts. No, this wasn't the day that his TV talk show premiered. This was the day that Geraldo Rivera showed the world what was inside Al Capone's vaults.
Scarface Al Capone may have built it, and nobody knows what's in it. Some say money. Some say body. Some say it's booby trap, and we're going to open it. What secret lies inside? It may be Scarface Al Capone's biggest secret, and we'll open it on live television. Step inside the vault with me on April 21st.
According to the AV Club, two men named John Jocelyn and Doug Llewellyn, yes, that Doug Llewellyn, formed a production company in the late 1970s called the Westgate Group, and they were always on the lookout for programming ideas. In late 1985, they found out from mafia historians that the old base of operations for 1920s mob boss Al Capone, Chicago's Lexington Hotel on Michigan Avenue, was being renovated by the Sunbow Foundation, a female job training school. They also found out that surveyors had discovered some subterranean chambers on the property that were walled off. And behind those concrete walls, there could be some of the late mob kingpin's possessions. Immediately, Jocelyn and Llewellyn had thoughts of what could be. Were there human remains in those chambers? Or maybe piles of money? They wanted to know the truth of what was down there. So they proposed a live broadcast of the wall's demolition to major networks. Taping it in advance just wouldn't work because there'd be no way to keep the reveal a secret. But the major networks weren't interested in televising a stunt that had an unknown outcome. So Jocelyn and Llewellyn took a meeting with syndicator Tribune Entertainment. Their pitch included rumored tunnels that went under Michigan Avenue from the Lexington Hotel to the Metropole Hotel across the street, a hidden staircase, and 3 cement vaults. The center vault supposedly had electrical cable protruding from the top. That's all that Tribune needed to hear. Jocelyn and Llewellyn made a deal. And then the syndicator sold the program, which would be titled The Mystery of Al Capone's Vaults, to different stations in 20 countries around the world. According to Mental Floss, Tribune agreed to finance a $900,000 production by Westgate that would consist of a live breaching of the vault, peppered with documentary-style footage that would tell the story of Capone's rise and fall in the criminal underworld. Initially, the choice of a host seemed obvious to Tribune president Sheldon Cooper. He wanted Robert Stack, the actor who played Capone's nemesis Elliot Ness in the Untouchables TV show from 1959 to 1963. But that choice didn't get a lot of support from the producers. They wanted someone who could handle a live broadcast without cue cards, someone with a news background. Their next thought was 60 Minutes star Mike Wallace, but there was no way CBS was going to loan him out for a syndicated special. And this was when Cooper said, well, there's this guy who just got fired from ABC, but he won them a whole bunch of awards. Tribune's executive vice president, Donald Hacker, says that when he called Geraldo Rivera's agent, the immediate response he got was, hell no. But when he took the offer to Rivera, which included a $25,000 payday, Rivera's response was, get 50 grand and I'll do it. It's a 2-hour show, so we'll do an hour documentary. And whatever happens with the vault, happens. Westgate had roughly 4 months to complete pre-production on the special before it aired, and producers of The Mystery of Al Capone's Vault say that there was a ton of work involved that people don't realize. In addition to getting proper permits from the city of Chicago and permission from Sunbow, there was a concentrated effort to get some idea of the origins of the vault, a 125-foot-long concrete wall that began in the Lexington basement and stretched out underneath Michigan Avenue's sidewalk. There was a ton of lore surrounding late 19th and early 20th century Chicago and what was going on underground. There were stories about an underground railroad running whiskey and other contraband, so the possibilities were endless about what they could find. They did x-rays from street level with inconclusive results, and they used ground-penetrating radar to figure out which direction to go. They were, quote, reasonably sure something was in there, but they just didn't know what it was. City of Chicago cultural historian Tim Samuelson told producers not to get their hopes up. He said, look, I hate to tell you this, but this is a Chicago sidewalk vault. I don't think there's anything in there at all. But producers refused to listen. Thoughts of dead bodies, cars, guns, and money had them excited. Llewellyn said that he thought they would really find something, while Rivera, for his part, says he was pretty confident something was there. While construction crews worked to prepare the site for a television broadcast, producers kept busy fleshing out the taped portions of the show, while Tribune's ad sales department tried to convince independent station owners that they had a winner. Some of the advertisers were nervous about the special's content. About 40% of it was pre-taped, which allowed advertisers to screen it, and they got General Mills and Budweiser on board, selling 24 spots at $100,000 per spot, and that's $2.4 million. Then Tribune took it to the television convention that January, and everyone got into it. They sold all of the commercial time, every spot, and then they had to go into each station in every individual TV market to clear out a prime time slot. This wasn't network TV. They put in the work to push the special, hype it up, and get it in front of as many eyeballs as they could. And they succeeded. At 7 p.m. Central Time on April 21st, 1986, Tribune syndicated The Mystery of Al Capone's Vaults to more than 180 domestic stations. An enthusiastic Rivera stood in front of the Lexington, promising an adventure akin to excavating King Tut's tomb. He compared the experience to, quote, stepping off the ledge of a building. Forensic examiners were on site just in case bodies were found. IRS agents were on site just in case cash was found, because Capone still owed over $800,000 in unpaid taxes. As cameras rolled, construction crews pulled down the concrete wall. And here's what those involved remember. The Chicago historian Samuelson said that he looked at the layers, the broken up sidewalk on the bottom and the slag from the steel mills on top, and said, sorry, it's all over. I see Doug go over to Geraldo, point to me, shrug his shoulders, and then Geraldo sits on a milk crate and puts his hands over his face. Jocelyn noted that they found some bottles, but Rivera points out they were finding nothing but trivial things. Clark Morehouse, the executive vice president of sales at Tribune, said it was just a bunch of shit. With time running out on the 2-hour broadcast and nothing but dirt remaining, Rivera blew an air horn and called off the workers. We didn't find the hollow spaces we were led to believe were in there, he told viewers. Sorry. Jocelyn notes that there was a little confusion when the show ended. They had an extra 90 seconds, so Geraldo sang. He padded it. It was total improv.
We didn't find the much heralded hollow spaces that we were led to believe were in there. So what can I say? I'm sorry. I would thank my buddies here for doing the job. Thank you for watching. I promised all the critics that if we didn't find anything, I'd sing a song. So, Chicago, that toddling town. All right, I'm going. I'll see you. Good night. I'm sorry.
Tribune VP Alan Grafman says that he thinks that Geraldo felt his career was over. And Tribune President Cooper agrees, saying Rivera was destroyed when the show ended. It was one of the saddest evenings you ever saw. Everybody was downtrodden. After the show ended, Rivera says that he and all the construction guys went to a honky-tonk bar and got drunk. Tribune VP Donald Hacker says Geraldo was very depressed that he didn't find anything. My take on it was a great adventure. People had fun. It was a great 2-hour movie with a bad ending. Grafman admits that the thought among everyone involved was, well, that's quite a way to go out. I don't want to say we were fearing for our jobs, but we were fearing for our jobs. Until the ratings came in. Following the anticlimactic conclusion, Rivera and the producers of Capone's Vaults went their separate, inebriated ways. While the press had a field day and the reviews were harsh, the Windy City was never windier, according to the company's own Chicago Tribune, the public held a different view. The next morning, the teletype machine was cranking out the overnight ratings. It ended up doing a 35 share in New York and a 70 share in Chicago. Grafman says they thought it would do a 20. For those of you that don't know, a share is basically the percentage of all the televisions that are on at one time. So getting a 70 share in Chicago means that 70% of people watching their televisions at that time were watching The Mystery of Al Capone's Vaults. Overall, more than 30 million people watched the special throughout the country. After everything was over, the funny part is the Lexington never got renovated. It was demolished in 1995. Despite Rivera's fear the special would prove problematic for his career, the opposite happened. In fall 1986, Tribune announced a deal for a daily talk show featuring the broadcaster. All the producers joked that there was nothing in the vault, but inside, they found Geraldo's talk show. May 25th, 1986 was a sunny Sunday afternoon when nearly 5 million Americans stepped out of their homes, workplaces, and even prisons to join hands in a jaw-dropping 4,125-mile human chain stretching from New York City's Battery Park to Long Beach, California. This was Hands Across America, a massive charity event aimed at raising money and awareness for hunger and homelessness in the United States. For 15 minutes, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, people across 16 states and Washington, D.C. linked hands in a bold show of solidarity. It was a moment that screamed 80s, wildly ambitious, star-studded, and just a little chaotic.
We do have a lot of poor and needy people in the United States, but it's also a sense of patriotism. I believe that's the biggest thing, pulling us together.
Yuppies tend to view it as an expression of the 60s cultural value. Old folks see it as neighbor helping neighbor, a lost tradition in America. Democrats see it as grassroots activism, and Republicans see it as private sector voluntarism. Parents see it as a way of bringing their families together. Patriots see it as a chance to prove America's goodness of spirit. Kids, God bless them, see it as the biggest party in the history of the world.
The event raised an estimated $15 million for charities, but it came with a hefty $17 million price tag for planning and promotion. The mastermind behind Hands Across America was Ken Cragen, a music promoter who'd already made waves in 1985 with We Are the World, the star-packed single that raised millions for famine relief in Ethiopia. That project was a global sensation, but Cragen wanted to go bigger, turning his focus to domestic issues like hunger and homelessness. The idea for Hands Across America sparked during a New York City ballet performance of We Are the World, when advertising executive Jeffrey Nightingale leaned over to Cragen and suggested getting people to hold hands across state lines to spotlight these domestic issues. It was a crazy idea, trying to organize millions of people to form a continuous chain across the country. But Cragen ran with it, billing it as the largest participatory event in the history of the world. That's the kind of over-the-top confidence that defined the 80s. But here's a surprising twist. This wasn't the first Hands Across America. Back in 1976, a man named Marvin J. Rosenblum had the same idea, trademarking the name and trying to pull off a human chain. But without corporate sponsors, his event fizzled, managing only a 10-mile line outside Chicago. His trademark lapsed in 1977, and Cragen insists that he had no clue about Rosenblum's attempt when he started planning his own version. It's a classic case of an idea whose time hadn't quite come. until the 80s, when big money and bigger names made all the difference. Speaking of money, Hands Across America needed serious funding to become reality. Cragen secured Coca-Cola and Citibank as major sponsors, who together coughed up an estimated $8 million. McDonald's got in on the action too, plastering ads for the event on their placemats, because nothing says fight hunger like a Happy Meal ad. Other corporations like American Express chipped in, covering roughly 2,000 miles of the 4,125-mile chain. Individual participants were asked to pay somewhere between $10 to $35 to join the line, and some heavy hitters stepped up in style. Purple Rain icon Prince sponsored an entire mile for $13,200. That's the equivalent of buying a luxury car in 1986, just to secure a spot in the chain. The event wasn't just about money, though. It was a celebrity magnet. Cragen assembled a roster that reads like an 80s time capsule. There were 4 co-chairs: comedian Bill Cosby, country star Kenny Rogers, actress Lily Tomlin, and baseball legend Pete Rose. A sports committee brought in NBA greats Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Alex English, plus Olympic track star Edwin Moses. Other big names included Oprah Winfrey, Michael J. Fox, Whoopi Goldberg, Harry Belafonte, Brooke Shields, and Dionne Warwick. Even Mickey Mouse was involved. To hype the event, organizers aired a commercial during Super Bowl 20 in January of '86, featuring the event's theme song, performed by none other than Toto. Because if you're making an '80s anthem, you call the guys who wrote Africa.
We must learn to love each other. See that man over there? He's my brother. And when he laughs, I laugh. And when he cries, I cry. And when he needs me, I'll be right there by his side. I wish I had a chance. Hands across America. Hands across this land I love. Divided we fall, united we stand. Hands across America.
But not everyone was feeling the love. The route, which zigzagged through 16 states like Pennsylvania, Maryland, Ohio, Kentucky, and Arizona, left out entire regions, including New England. This sparked protests from folks who felt snubbed, with Senator Ted Kennedy publicly voicing his frustration that the chain wouldn't run through his region. You wouldn't think a charity event would stir up controversy, but the idea of some states being left out of a national effort rubbed people the wrong way. When the big day arrived, an estimated 4,924,000 people turned out, based on counts from local organizers. The Associated Press tracked participation across 550 cities. The event saw 5 weddings, several baptisms, and at least 1 bar mitzvah, turning those 15 minutes into a celebration of community. Participants sang "We Are the World," "America the Beautiful," and the Hands Across America theme song, belting out their 80s pride. But the chain wasn't exactly unbroken. Gaps were a big issue in some areas, so organizers got creative, using ribbons, ropes, banners, and even cattle to bridge the gaps. It was the kind of spontaneous can-do energy that made the event feel alive, even when it wasn't perfect. One of the most controversial figures in the chain was President Ronald Reagan, who joined on the White House lawn alongside Nancy Reagan, the Reverend Billy Graham, and Olympic gymnast Mary Lou Retton. It sounds heartwarming, but just a week earlier, Reagan had made headlines by saying hunger in America wasn't due to a lack of food, but rather people not knowing where to find help. The comment sparked outrage, with critics arguing he'd done little to address the hunger epidemic. Protests broke out in Detroit's Lafayette Park, and some questioned why Reagan was even involved. He insisted his participation wasn't a response to the backlash, but the timing raised eyebrows. The financial side of Hands Across America was another sticking point. Cragen had big dreams, hoping to raise 50, maybe even 100 million. Participants were supposed to donate $10 to $35, and corporate sponsors covered a chunk of the costs. But thousands who pledged donations never followed through, costing the event an estimated $7 to $8 million. In total, the event raised about $34 million, but after spending $17 million on 9 months of planning, a 400-person staff, and giant computers in Marshfield, Wisconsin to coordinate the chain, only about $15 to $16 million actually went to charities. Robert Hayes of the National Coalition for the Homeless didn't mince words, calling it, quote, a national extravaganza empty of content because it spent so much to raise so little. Despite the criticism, there were moments of pure magic. Take Amy Sherwood, a 6-year-old girl living in a New York homeless shelter when she was chosen to star in the Hands Across America promotional video. Her charm caught the eye of Hollywood talent scouts who signed her to an acting contract. By the time the event rolled around, Amy and her family had moved into a Brooklyn apartment, and she took her place as the symbolic first link in the chain at Battery Park. Now that's the kind of story that captures the hope at the heart of this event. Hands Across America wasn't perfect. The Los Angeles Times reported huge gaps in rougher parts of East LA where volunteers couldn't convince locals to leave their front porches to join. In desert stretches, ribbons and ropes stood in for people over hundreds of miles. Yet, even with its flaws, the event did something powerful. Organizers argued it raised the profile of hunger and homelessness, likely spurring more volunteering and donations to related causes. It brought together an unlikely mix of people for a shared goal. In the nearly 40 years since, Hands Across America has faded from memory, but it remains a quirky, heartfelt snapshot of the 80s when America dared to dream big, hold hands, and sing through the gaps. And honestly, I remember it just like it was yesterday. I was part of Hands Across America. Were you? Please let me know in the comments.
All across the country, the spirit was rising. For young and old, every color and creed, jazzercisers and advertisers, brides and Boy Scouts, nuns and bikers. It was a day of celebration. Celebration of life and love and caring.
We're here because we think that the people in this country should all have a place to live and food to eat, and we're contributing our time and our money and we just want our support to this cause.
Just feel like helping people out.
I wouldn't want them to do it without me.
And they came from near and far.
There's a lot of people up in Idaho that are poor and stuff, and we thought it would be kind of neat to go down and do something about it.
It started out rough. Somebody stole our van from the rental center last night. But we made do with Plan B.
We came all the way from Baltimore.
It was just exciting to come from Kinston for this particular thing.
They're each one of a kind. They're Cabbage Patch Kids. You can give them all your love.
Two.
Just want the customer.
The customers were standing in front of this store at 7 o'clock this morning. The store didn't open until 9, and only a few Cabbage Patch dolls were going on sale. Once the coupons were given out to those few parents who would be allowed to buy a doll, the word was given out that the dolls would be given out behind the store, out back at the freight entrance. And then the race was on. Otherwise dignified, calm, mannerly parents broke into a sprint.
Well, I had to take what they gave me, and they gave me a boy, and I wanted a girl. This is my second trip around. My husband works here, and I can't even get what I want.
I missed work. I'm late for work to get this for my little girl. I'm not going to tell my boss. I'm trying to get there now.
I'm so excited. We waited here since 7:30, and I was just ecstatic. In fact, I ran around and got another ticket.
And within a matter of minutes, it was over.
Back in 1983, the United States lost its collective mind over a homely dough-faced doll with no chin and a dimpled smile. This was the Cabbage Patch Kids craze, a phenomenon so intense it turned holiday shopping into a contact sport. Malls were overrun with desperate parents, store displays stormed, and parking lots mobbed. One Wisconsin radio announcer even joked that a B-29 bomber would drop 2,000 Cabbage Patch Kids into Milwaukee County Stadium, urging people to bring catcher's mitts and hold up their credit cards to be photographed. Believe it or not, at least a dozen people showed up. That's the kind of madness we're talking about. A frenzy that set the stage for every toy craze from Tickle Me Elmo to Black Friday stampedes. Here's the full story of how Cabbage Patch Kids became a cultural juggernaut. The Cabbage Patch Kids didn't just appear out of nowhere. Their origin traces back to Xavier Roberts, a 21-year-old art student in Georgia who in the late 70s was inspired by the folk art movement. Experimenting with hand stitching and quilting, he created soft sculpture figures he called Little People in 1976. These weren't just dolls, though, according to Roberts, who insisted on calling them babies or kids. He took them to craft shows across the country, eventually setting up shop in a converted medical clinic in Cleveland, Georgia, which he renamed Babyland General Hospital. And this wasn't your typical toy store. Sales clerks dressed as nurses, and the dolls slept in incubators and cribs, each with a birth certificate, adoption papers, and a name pulled from 1938 Georgia birth records. It was pure theater, and it worked. By the time Roberts licensed his creation to toy manufacturer Coleco in 1982, he'd already sold over 200,000 Little People. It was at this point when he renamed them Cabbage Patch Kids, which was based on a childhood fable that new babies were plucked from cabbage gardens. Printed on every box was this fantastical story. Many years ago, a young boy named Xavier happened upon an enchanted cabbage patch where he found very special little people who called themselves Cabbage Patch Kids. To help fulfill the Cabbage Patch Kids' dream of having families with whom to share their love, Xavier set about building a special place known as Babyland General, where the kids remain until each is chosen for adoption. Won't you adopt a Cabbage Patch Kid and fill a little heart with love? That adoption angle was marketing gold. Each doll was unique, with computer randomized variations in skin color, hair, clothing, freckles, smiles, and even dimple placement, made possible by new post industrial manufacturing tech that allowed infinite customization. No two Cabbage Patch Kids were alike, and they came with adoption papers ready to be signed, tapping into kids' nurturing instincts. Coleco even included testimony from two child psychologists in their press packet, claiming the dolls triggered a releasing mechanism that made people want to cuddle with them, just like picking up a real baby. Inside their boxes, the dolls reached out with cozy, open arms, practically begging to be taken home. Coleco knew they had a hit on their hands, but they didn't skimp on promotion. In June 1983, they kicked things off with a press conference at Boston's Children's Museum, where local school kids performed a mass adoption ceremony in front of media cameras, each taking home a free doll. From there, Cabbage Patch Kids were sent to every major media outlet and women's magazine, even landing in the hands of pregnant Today Show host Jane Pauley, who gave them a full 5-minute segment. The Newsweek cover on December 12, 1983, captured the mania perfectly. A young girl with a bowl cut squeezing a ginger-haired doll, winking at the camera as if to say, "Buy this for me now." But retailers were caught off guard. Early Christmas shoppers were buying an average of $3 each, and by October 6th, Coleco announced all 2 million dolls they'd manufactured were gone. By Thanksgiving, what started as sellouts turned into what Newsweek called the Great Cabbage Patch Panic. The chaos was unlike anything seen before. Shoppers camped overnight at toy stores, stormed displays, and spilled out of parking lots. One Texas woman was photographed clutching her doll while another shopper's purse strap was wrapped around her throat. Store managers tried to control the madness by stocking dolls at the front of stores, but customers were too scared to face the crowds after paying, with some having boxes ripped from their hands. Scalpers resold the $25 dolls for $150, and knockoffs called Flower Kids flooded in from overseas, often stuffed with flammable industrial rags that smelled of kerosene, a key way to spot a fake, since real Cabbage Patch Kids had no such odor. The other way to tell the difference was the lack of a belly button. One Kansas City mailman named Ed Pennington was so desperate to get a doll for his 5-year-old daughter that he flew to London, where demand was lower. Of course, the frenzy wasn't without critics. Adoption groups were upset, arguing the doll's adoption gimmick trivialized real adoption, fearing it might make kids think people could be bought. Consumer advocates also slammed Coleco for false advertising, running TV commercials that lured shoppers when they knew supply was short. Coleco eventually pulled their TV spots, but the headlines, which were free publicity, kept the craze alive. A Wall Street Journal editorial even claimed more Americans were worried about snagging a Cabbage Patch Kid than the threat of nuclear war at the height of the Cold War. Xavier Roberts, for his part, leaned into the fantasy. As president of Original Appalachian Artworks, the company he incorporated in 1978 to produce the dolls, he named one of his early creations, Otis Lee, as chairman of the board. Otis traveled everywhere with Roberts, treated like a real personality. Okay, quick side note here from editor Natalie. After I recorded this original script, I had to throw this in. I could not forget it. Before Xavier Roberts and Little People, there was a woman named Martha Nelson Thomas who created doll babies in 1971. Xavier Roberts ran a craft store in the early to mid 70s, and he met Martha when he found her doll babies, which were all handmade, at a Kentucky craft fair. He pretty much took her idea and ran with it, cutting her out in the process. There was a lawsuit, and it's quite a story, one that I don't have time to tell in this video, but it's such an interesting case that first I had to mention it here, and I will be making a video about it in the near future so I can go into detail. All right, end of side note. If you were an 80s kid, you know that Cabbage Patch Kids weren't just a toy. They were a cultural touchstone. By New Year's 1984, Coleco had sold over 3 million dolls, generating $2 billion of their $4.5 billion in revenue that year, thanks to accessories like lunchboxes, bikes, pajamas, and cereal. The Cabbage Patch frenzy was literally the blueprint for engineered toy mania more than a decade before Beanie Babies, as it exposed the lengths parents would go to for status and their kids' smiles. It was consumer anarchy, 80s style, complete with trampled shoppers, fake dolls, and a guy flying across the Atlantic for a $25 toy. As for 6-year-old me, who was at the ideal age for a Cabbage Patch Kid back in 1983, I got a knockoff for Christmas because finding a real one was impossible. This was such a memorable moment in my family that when I graduated from the University of Kansas in 2000, one of the gifts my mom gave me was a real Xavier Roberts little person, complete with his signature on the butt. At 47, it's still one of my most prized possessions. Thanks, Mom.
I've been looking for freedom. I've been looking so long.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Reporting tonight from Berlin.
From the Berlin Wall specifically, take a look at them. They've been there since last night. They are here in the thousands. They are here in the tens of thousands. Occasionally they shout, Die Mauer muss weg, the wall must go. Thousands and thousands of West Germans come to make the point that the wall has suddenly become irrelevant. Something, as you can see, almost to party on. How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history?
1989 was a year that changed the world. And oddly enough, it was also a year that cemented David Hasselhoff's place in history in a way that few could have predicted. If you thought this entry would be about the actual fall of the Berlin Wall and the politics and ramifications of that, well, I hate to disappoint you, because what I remember about this whole event, which happened when I was 12 years old, was Hasselhoff and his piano scarf. Known to Americans at the time as a star of Knight Rider, Hasselhoff was more than just a TV heartthrob in Germany. He was a singing sensation, and the Hoff's 1988 song Looking for Freedom became an anthem for a nation on the brink of transformation. When the Berlin Wall fell on November 9th, 1989, some Germans actually linked Hasselhoff's music to that seismic moment, even holding up signs thanking him for the wall's collapse. Hasselhoff's journey to German icon status began in 1985 with his album Night Rocker, which became a surprise hit across the Atlantic. But it was his 1988 single Looking for Freedom, an English adaptation of the 1978 German song Auf der Straße nach Süden, translated as On the Road to the South, that truly captured hearts. I can imagine my German wasn't even close there, but I tried. Released in anticipation of his 1989 album of the same name, the song's lyrics about longing for freedom resonated deeply in a Germany divided since 1961 by the 12-foot-high Berlin Wall, which separated the communist East from the capitalist West. By June 1989, when the album dropped, Looking for Freedom was topping the charts in West Germany. Its timing was uncanny, as East Germans were growing restless under the restrictive travel policies, and whispers of change were in the air. But when the Berlin Wall fell, it wasn't because of any single song. It was due to a mix of political shifts and a premature announcement about relaxed travel restrictions for East Germans. The news sparked a spontaneous rush to the border, with Berliners from both sides chipping away at the concrete divide. Hasselhoff, in a 2019 interview with Time magazine, was quick to deflect any credit for this historic event. He said, quote, "I never ever said I had anything to do with bringing down the wall. I was just in the right place at the right time with the right song. I was just a man who sang a song about freedom." Yet, for some Germans, the connection was undeniable. Fans who'd been humming Looking for Freedom for months saw Hasselhoff as a symbol of hope. One woman even approached him for an autograph saying, "You're the man who sings of freedom." Others held signs crediting him for the wall's fall, weaving his music into their memories of liberation. Hasselhoff's first encounter with the wall came in 1987 when he flew over it and was struck by its stark reality. "I couldn't believe it," he said, "the towers and the severity." While in East Germany to do an interview at the Grand Hotel and promote his Freedom album and song, he felt uncomfortable with its gaudy interior against the gray backdrop outside. Opting to step out, he met 3 girls who recognized him as the Freedom singer and asked for his autograph. Selfies weren't a thing just yet. That moment stuck with him, a hint of the song's impact. So, when he was invited to perform on the Sylvester Show, Germany's equivalent of Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve broadcast, he saw an opportunity. His song was number 1, and he boldly requested to sing on the wall itself, thinking there's no effing way that will ever happen. But to his shock, Organizers agreed, arranging for him to perform from a crane above the wall's remains on New Year's Eve 1989 in front of what he estimated was 1 million people. The night was unforgettable. Hasselhoff described it as the greatest celebration of all time, a moment only surpassed in his life at the birth of his children. He performed looking for freedom in a now iconic outfit, a black jacket with glowing lights, which he originally had made for the Osmonds 4th of July Stadium of Fire event that he was part of, plus a piano key scarf that became a fan favorite. So much so that during his 2019 tour, he noticed audience members waving their own piano scarves. That was a huge marketing opportunity missed. Unlike typical performances where he'd play to the camera, Hasselhoff leaned out of the crane, connecting directly with the crowd. I was so moved by the experience, he said. I was with the people that night, and I didn't care if I fell out. I was on a mission from God. The moment wasn't without danger, though. While singing in below zero temperatures, a firework hit his leg, but he quickly put it out. Another firework nearly missed his head. The New Year's Eve performance cemented Hasselhoff's status as a German legend.
Proves my old theory. Germans love David Hasselhoff.
He brought back pieces of the wall, a little piece of freedom, and gifted them on plaques to the cast and crew of his new show, Baywatch. But apparently they didn't fully appreciate their significance at the time. Over the decades, Hasselhoff returned to Germany repeatedly, including for his Freedom, The Journey Continues tour in 2019, which began on the October 3rd anniversary of Germany's 1990 reunification. During the tour, fans shared emotional stories. A 45-year-old man from Rostock, East Germany, tearfully told Hasselhoff he was 15 when the song gave him hope. "You really had something to do with bringing down the wall," the man said. Hasselhoff gently disagreed, but the sentiment was clear. For some, his music was a beacon during a dark time. Hasselhoff's connection to Germany shaped his life profoundly. He has said the experience gave him honor, credibility, and humility. When he returned home and found himself sitting in the Baywatch scarab, he didn't care about American opinions. He says being a rock star in Germany was what mattered. "I'm not a preacher. I'm not Billy Graham," he said. "I'm David Hasselhoff." Still, he embraced the responsibility of comforting East Germans, many of whom he saw crying, telling them, "It's okay, you're free now." For him, looking for freedom remains relevant even in today's world. His 1989 performance, watched by millions, wasn't just a concert, it was a celebration of a divided nation coming together. Hasselhoff may downplay his role, but for Germans who sang his song as the wall crumbled, he was more than just the guy from Knight Rider. He was a voice of hope, perched on a crane in a light-up jacket, singing for a freer world. And oh, if you're wondering, yes, Hasselhoff still has that famous jacket.
Because of the lack of education on AIDS, discrimination, fear, panic, and lies surrounded me. I became the target of Ryan White jokes. I was labeled a troublemaker, my mom an unfit mother, and I was not welcome anywhere.
You've had a very front row seat to prejudice, haven't you?
Very much so.
Tell me something about that.
In my case, it was fear, and just because, I supposedly had something in my body that nobody else had, or very few people had, and I think it's because you're different. I'm surprised we really have dogs nowadays because they're different. It's amazing how, you can accept a dog into your house, but you can't accept someone because of their race, their color or their religion, or what they have in them.
In the mid-1980s, a teenager from Kokomo, Indiana, became an unlikely flashpoint in the HIV/AIDS crisis, exposing deep-seated fears, stigmas, and divisions in America. Ryan White, just 13 when he was diagnosed with AIDS in 1984, faced intense public scrutiny and sparked a national controversy when his local school barred him from attending classes. His fight to return to school, set against the backdrop of a moral panic over AIDS, made him a household name and a symbol of innocence in a crisis that often vilified many others. Ryan's story began with his health struggles. Born in December 1971, he was diagnosed as a newborn with severe hemophilia, a condition that impairs blood clotting. At age 5, he started receiving factor VIII injections, a medical breakthrough that pulled blood from thousands of donors to prevent excessive bleeding. While a lifeline for hemophiliacs, these treatments carried risks. By 1983, over 80% of those with severe hemophilia using factor VIII showed signs of hepatitis B exposure, a trade-off that many accepted. Ryan tested positive for hepatitis B in November of 1984. Unbeknownst to most, the blood supply wasn't yet heat-treated to eliminate HIV, making factor VIII a potential vector for the virus. In 1984, 12-year-old Ryan began suffering night sweats, diarrhea, lethargy, and stomach cramps, symptoms that dimmed his hopes of becoming a typical obnoxious teenager. A 104-degree fever landed him in a Kokomo hospital, where an x-ray revealed pneumonia in both lungs. When antibiotics failed, Ryan was transferred to Riley Hospital for Children in Indianapolis. There, doctors diagnosed pneumocystis carinii pneumonia, a rare infection tied to weakened immune systems, strongly suggesting AIDS. Though reliable HIV tests weren't yet available, Ryan's hemophilia, factor VIII use, and pneumonia pointed to the virus. It was December 1984, and Ryan was 13, facing a diagnosis that carried not just medical, but social weight. The doctors gave him 6 months to live. After he overcame his first serious bout of illness, however, Ryan wanted to return to the Western Middle School in Russiaville, Indiana. But controversy erupted in July of '85 when the middle school barred Ryan from attending. The decision coincided with news of actor Rock Hudson's AIDS diagnosis, which shocked the public because Hudson, an icon of Hollywood's golden age, didn't fit the stigmatized risk groups of the time, which were homosexuals, hemophiliacs, heroin users, and Haitians. Ryan's exclusion from school became a lightning rod, drawing national and international attention to Kokomo and Russiaville. The public's fear of AIDS spreading beyond risk groups fueled the debate, with Ryan caught in the crossfire. The battle over Ryan's right to attend school was fierce. Many in his community, gripped by misinformation about AIDS transmission, opposed his return, fearing he posed a danger. But Ryan's status as a hemophiliac who contracted AIDS through contaminated blood products made him a sympathetic figure, unlike the thousands of gay men and drug users whose AIDS-related deaths were largely ignored by the public and federal government at the time. Ryan's fight to return to school dragged into 1986, playing out in courtrooms and on national news. His frequent health scares and hospital stays underscored his vulnerability, amplifying his innocence in the public eye. A nurse from the school noted that Ryan rarely attended classes anyway due to his illness. Yet in the spring of '86, he won the right to return to Western Middle School, a victory that garnered widespread media coverage. It transformed Ryan into a global celebrity in the face of AIDS awareness. He and his mother, Jean, embarked on a publicity tour, appearing on Good Morning America and attending an American Foundation for AIDS Research Gala in New York City, co-hosted by Elizabeth Taylor and Calvin Klein. At the Jacob Javits Center, Ryan, in a tuxedo, met Yoko Ono and Mayor Ed Koch, while Andy Warhol photographed him and his mother. By February of 1987, Indiana's health commissioner Woodrow Myers Jr. called Ryan the best-known AIDS victim in the United States, if not the world, noting he posed the lowest possible political risk for leaders tackling the epidemic. The perception of Ryan as a safe symbol fueled both his influence and the controversy. His innocence contrasted sharply with the guilt assigned to marginalized groups, a divide that shaped policy debates. As Ryan's profile grew, so did the tension over how AIDS was framed. The controversy peaked with the Ryan White Care Act, which was debated amid fierce moral and political divides. As Ryan lay dying at Riley Hospital in early April 1990, the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee dedicated the bill to him, stating he changed the world with his dignity, patience, and almost unvarying good cheer. The act was ultimately passed and signed into law on August 18, 1990, by President George H.W. Bush, authorizing $882 million for 1991 and $4.5 billion through 1995 for HIV/AIDS prevention and treatment. Ryan's life ended on April 8, 1990, after a final illness struck during a trip to Southern California. He died at the age of 18, having lived far longer than the 6 months to 2 years doctors originally predicted in 1985. His funeral on April 11th, held in the Grand Second Presbyterian Church in Meridian Hills, Indianapolis, was a spectacle unlike any other for a person with AIDS. Some 1,500 mourners filled the Gothic sanctuary, while hundreds more stood outside in the cold rain, unable to get in. First Lady Barbara Bush sat behind Ryan's family, and Michael Jackson, one of the biggest stars on the planet, sat next to Ryan's mother. Pallbearers include NFL star Howie Long, singer Elton John, and talk show host Phil Donahue. CNN broadcast the 45-minute ceremony live, and all 3 major networks aired footage that evening. Ryan lay in an open casket, dressed in a faded jean jacket over a red t-shirt, with Oakley shades on his face, channeling the rock star style of his idol, Bruce Springsteen.
We're told that several schools are allowing their students to watch Ryan White's funeral on television. So before we close our special report, we want to show you a message Ryan left for you before his death.
I'm Ryan White, and this is a message for teenagers only. There are 3 ways you can get AIDS: sex, needles, and ignorance. It's the last one that gets most people today. I didn't have a choice, but you do. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You can get confidential answers by calling the AIDS hotline. It could be the most important lesson you ever learn.
All right, that's the end of part 2. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications so you know when part 3 drops. You won't want to miss it, because that video will reveal the top 5 news stories of the 1980s according to this 80s kid. Okay, bye.